Welcome to Medicaid Mastery, a cut above explaining the real long-term care Medicaid system.
Welcome back to Medicaid Mastery with Antony Turbeville, one of Florida's leading experts in long-term care Medicaid planning. I'm Evan Mack, and today's topic is all about asset protection, something that's top of mind for anyone facing long-term care costs. We'll talk about what Medicaid counts, what doesn't, and what you can do to protect your savings, your property, and your peace of mind. This is how to protect your assets for Medicaid before and after you apply. Tony, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me, Evan.
What are the most common assets families worry about losing to Medicaid?
So I think the most common one is the home. You know, everybody hears they can take your home. I think we covered that in another podcast, but basically in Florida, you really don't have to worry about your home. They're not going to take the home. They don't have the legal mechanism to take the home. It's protected under the Florida Constitution. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving legal advice. This is general education. Talk to your attorney about the specifics. But the same reason that, you know, Burt Reynolds and O.J. Simpson moved to Florida and bought a big house is the same reason that Medicaid can't collect from it. It is creditor protected in Florida. Okay. But once they find that out, of course, they're relieved. And that's generally one of the family's bigger assets. But then they worry about the money in the bank, you know, the car, the brokerage account, the IRAs, the 401ks, the 403bs, the deferred comp plans, you know, all the quote, money that they've worked their lifetime to accumulate. Once the house is out of the way, then it goes to the cash. Now, there are times when there's more cash than there is value in the house. But at the end of the day, families want to protect everything that they can. I mean, the government has gotten crazy on the taxes and what they charge us. And now the husband and the wife have to work to get by. So the government's taken all the money they can, and then they leave you to deal with the most expensive part at the end. And just kind of off track, Evan, but if you'll allow me to get on my soapbox just a minute.
Please do.
Every now and then I'll have somebody say, well, you know, it seems like what you do is cheating the system. And I won't, you know, tell anybody to compromise their ethics, you know, do what you want. But it's a kind of a crazy system because there are people who do nothing to contribute to society, go through life, don't work, don't pay taxes, don't do any of that. They can get help right now, no problem, no hiccups, just fill out a form and you got the benefits. The people who were the most responsible that worked, contributed to society, paid taxes, lived on less than what they made, saved money, they're the people that get penalized at the end of their life. And so all Medicaid planning, whether it's pre-planning or crisis planning, is rearranging your assets in a way that you can meet the criteria to get the benefits that you paid into the system to be able to have, right? It's no different than the tax laws. The courts have been very clear that people have no responsibility to pay more tax than they're legally required to. And if they want to arrange their affairs to pay little or no tax, then that's okay. Well, this is no different. You're just rearranging your affairs to meet the rules that the government has laid down and say, if you meet these rules, then this is what we'll pay. And so we're just meeting their rules. That's all.
So how does Medicaid determine what assets count against someone?
So I don't know how they determine it, but I can tell you what they are and what does and doesn't count. So, for example, the way we normally look at a case is we look at all the assets. We just list everything. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a house or cars or bank accounts or annuities or life insurance policies or lots in Arizona, boats, motorhomes, travel trailers, savings bonds, whatever it is, you just list them. Then you go through and say what can be excluded or exempted or made non-countable, however you want to word it. So, for example, okay, is the home, is it going to remain, are they going to have an intent to return? Yes, we can check that off as non-countable. They can have one automobile regardless of age or value. So we check the most valuable automobile, and the manual says pick the automobile or vehicle most advantageous to the family. So even if it's the 1964 Corvette that's in the garage under the cover that hardly ever gets driven, if that's the most valuable one, we get to call that the primary vehicle. Okay, so that doesn't count. IRAs or retirement plans that have distributions. In Florida, this is not true in all states, but in Florida, it doesn't count. So we say, okay, that doesn't count. And then when we're done going through everything that we can get rid of, burial plots and prepaid funeral plans, they don't count. There's a bunch of little things that don't count. We get rid of all those, and then what's left is what we have to determine what to do with to keep it from disqualifying the person for Medicaid. So, for example, let's say they manage that it's a single person and they have $200,000 in CDs and a $10,000 bank account, right? Well, that $210,000, you get to deduct the $2,000 that Medicaid says they can have. So we're now $208,000 too rich. That's what we need to start rearranging into one of those non-countable categories. So then it's a matter of what can we do to get rid of that $208,000 in a way that the family, not necessarily the person, but the family still controls the assets, but they've just rearranged them.
So what about timing, Tony? Is it ever too late to protect your savings or protect your property?
When you've spent it all on long-term care, it's too late. Okay. So I have people who, call me as soon as the person goes to the hospital and it's clear they're going to the nursing home. I have people call me who've been paying, they've spent $130,000 in the last 12 months and they got, 50,000 left and we protect the 50. I can't fix what you've already spent. Well, that's not true. I can often fix about 3 months of what you've already spent, but nothing more than that, right? So it's too late when you're out of money.
So what's the difference between pre-planning and crisis planning?
Well, pre-planning is when you essentially give all of your money away more than 5 years ago. And you don't have any ownership interest in it, whether you used a trust or you gave it to family members. But you don't have an ownership interest and haven't in the last 5 years, then you can qualify for Medicaid, even if you gave $1 billion away, right? Crisis planning is you didn't do planning more than 5 years before needing the long-term care. So Medicaid is going to say all the assets are yours, and you can only have 2,000 if you're a single person, and you can have 154,700, I think it is this year in 2025, if you have a spouse. So the spouse can have the 150 plus thousand. The individual can have two.
So speaking of spouses, how can a married couple structure their finances to kind of safeguard the healthy spouse?
There's a lot of ways to do it. Community spouse cases offer a lot of opportunities. One, I think we covered in another podcast called the Just Say No or spousal refusal. That's a specific strategy where you move all of the assets to the healthy spouse, preferably all of the income, and then that person just refuses to pay for the care of the person who needs the Medicaid. Now, there's some special rules. I won't get into the weeds. You have to do things in a certain order and sign certain papers and yada, yada, yada. But that's one way to do it. The other way to do it, for example, is you can just lend it all to your child, right? So let's say you have a trusted child or children. They do the right kind of promissory note written, with the right words on it, signed by the right people. You lend everything to them. You get benefits for the person who needs it. And then once they're approved, the children can pay all the assets back to the healthy spouse. Because once the needing the care is approved, they no longer look at the spouse's assets again. Not that they can't. By law, those assets don't count. So for example, the healthy spouse could buy a lotto ticket and win the Powerball or whatever it is for $150 million, and the person on Medicaid will remain on Medicaid. Now, it's important, just in case this happens to somebody, that they buy that lottery ticket with their dollar, not their spouse's dollar, right? So if you use your spouse's credit card, we got a problem. Not a big one, because the $150 million, you can handle it. But my point is that you just lend it to the kids and then the kids pay it back. There's a lot of other ways to do it. You can get into annuities. I'm not a big fan of those. There's drawbacks to them. A lot of ways to do it.
Can you talk about those annuities real quick, or trust, or are they overhyped? Do they help? Why aren't you a big fan?
There's two things I dislike about using annuities, unless it's just there's no other way to do it. And I can't think of a scenario that would be true. One is that you have to liquidate the other assets to buy the annuity. And oftentimes there are highly appreciated assets that it's going to trigger taxes to sell them off, right? So you got to trigger taxes. Then you got to buy an annuity from a commercial insurance company that's going to pay you virtually zero interest. Then on top of that, for it to qualify, be quote a Medicaid qualified annuity, you have to make the beneficiary your spouse that's in the nursing home, right? The contingent beneficiary, the person who gets it if they die before you. So the person in the nursing home dies, you're still alive, now you die. If there's any payments remaining in that annuity, it's got to be paid to the state of Florida. No way around that. So you're running the risk that you die before you're supposed to, and the money just gets eaten up. And the whole point was to protect it to begin with. So there's just better ways to do it.
So, Tony, what's the biggest mistakes you see families make when they're trying to protect these assets?
So two big mistakes. One is to think there's nothing that they can do, because there's just a lot they can do. I've never seen a case that we can't protect virtually 100% of the money.
Wow.
Number two is listening to the people who are well-meaning, the next door neighbor whose parents or friends went through it, the estate planning attorney who doesn't really know Medicaid. They don't do a lot of it. They know a little bit. They may recommend like a personal services contract, which is a huge tax trap. So not getting with somebody who really understands what's going on, and they just take a little advice from here and a little advice from there. For example, I can't tell you how many people that come to me and go, okay, well, our friends told us to move the house out of mom's name last month. We just did that. Or I just moved the $100,000 in the bank to my account. Well, that's all fixable. I can fix it, but there's no reason to be doing work twice, right? Come get the right help from people who know what's going on, whether that's Platinum or somebody else, but make sure they know. When you're comfortable, they know. Pay them the money that they're asking. They're worth every dime. They're going to save you so much more than they cost you. It's just not even comparable.
Tony, what about the people that have spent a lot of money? Like we kind of talked about it earlier, but and now they're afraid that things are too late for them. They put themselves in a bad spot. What would you say to someone that's just afraid that it's too late to plan?
Well, if there's any money left, right, it's not too late. And you can say, well, it's, not worth bothering anymore. We started with 300 grand and now we got 20, might as well just spend the rest. Well, that's crazy, because you're going to have burial expenses and, other expenses that come up. We might as well save that 20 grand. It's 20 grand. Let's save it. How hard or how long does somebody work to make $20,000? And you'll spend a lot less hours than you would working. And the 20,000 you're saving is a non-taxable 20,000. So how long do you have to work to get 20,000 non-taxable? For most people, it's a pretty good while, right?
Wow.
So It's too late when you've spent the last dollar.
All right. All righty, Tony. Thank you for the information, sir.
You're so welcome. Good to see you again.
Alrighty, guys, and thank you all for listening to Medicaid Mastery with Tony Turbeville. To learn more about protecting your assets while qualifying for care, head to platben.com. That's PLATBEN.com, and connect with their team. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if this helped you, please leave a review and share it with someone who could benefit from all this valuable information.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.